Have you ever wondered who you would be if all of your labels disappeared? If you could no longer identify yourself by your job, your religion, your race, your gender, your achievements, your degree or lack thereof, your so-called failures, your relationship status, right? Whether you're married, you're single, how many children you have, all the things that, quote, associate you with being you. Your bank account, or even your personal story. Who would you really be? The question sits at the heart of what many people call, quote, an ego death. Now, I don't really like the D word that much, so I might start using the word surrender, ego surrendering, but you'll know what I mean. This is what we're talking about, right? Where the part of you that identifies so much with these labels, when it starts to give some of its power away, if you will, right? Calm itself down. Now, I know the term, quote, ego death can sound dramatic, and it kind of is. Some people hear it and they imagine, quote, losing themselves, right? Others think it's some mystical experience reserved for monks, gurus, or people living on mountaintops. But my experience was very different. It really was. And a, quote, ego surrendering, if you will, is more accessible than you might think. In fact, looking back, I don't think that the ego surrendering is really about losing yourself at all. Not your real self. I think it's about discovering the part of yourself that was there before all the labels, because that's what happened with me. It's about remembering who you really, really, really are. And this is real stuff. This is not just talking points. My ego surrendering experience, and I'll explain it as best I can. It changed my life. It birthed this channel. It birthed my metaphysical identity. It really, really changed everything. So today I want to share with you what ego surrendering revealed about me and what it might reveal about you and your true identity, your true self. So before we go any further, let's talk about what the ego actually is. Let's see what the dictionary definition says, right? This is dictionary.com. Ego is the I or self of any person. A person as, quote, thinking, feeling, and willing and distinguishing itself from the selves of others and from objects of its thought. Very, very, very interesting. The part of you that distinguishes yourself from me, right? The part of me that distinguishes myself from you, right? But if you're really, into this metaphysical journey, you may know this already, or you may not. This may be news to you. But the true part of yourself is just one, meaning that we are all just one, right? Not to get too ahead of myself, but that's what I discovered. And the part of the ego, it's not, quote, bad, right? It's not that it has to totally go away, for us to have a better human experience. But from my experience, I now, quote, believe or see that the goal of, lessening the ego, or just of the human experience itself, is for us to not let that part of us get in the way, and to see that all is the one, right? That all is one. You might have even heard when they say all is mind. Well, that may be another video, right? But whose mind? Well, that's part of this one. But whose mind, right? Mine, yours. All of it belongs to the one having the dream. Okay. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but I really love speaking about this because, this is really what happened to me, and this is what, many of the gurus are saying more and more is what is starting to happen to humanity right now, that we're going through a quote worldwide ego surrendering, right? So that's a little bit about what the ego is. And so it's often portrayed as, the villain, right? The bad thing in spiritual circles. But I really don't see it like that. It's simply just the identity that you built around yourself. Okay, it's part of the game, right? Like when you pick the character, the avatar, I call myself, it actually came to me, the avatar of God, right? In essence, we all are. But it's you go on the video game, you figure out which character you want to be for this round, if you will. You pick the skin color, the hair, the outfit. Well, it's very much the same in human life. We're building that ego. We're building that identity of so-called separation, which is really the source. Now, you may know this already. It's really the source disguising itself as separate entities so that it can interact in the game that it designed. Okay? Am I getting ahead of myself? Do you notice already? This is what is going on, right? But the ego is the collection of stories, beliefs, roles, labels that help you to navigate the world, right? It's not bad, but it's when it starts to take over. If it starts to take over, that's where the issues come in, right? We cannot let that happen. We can no longer let it happen. It's the voice that says, I am this, right? I am that, which is not bad, right? We know that I am is God's name, right? That's the creator's name, right? So whatever you say after I am, that's what you become. But it's that separateness that we are, trying to lessen, if you will. And certain experiences will bring you to the peeling back of the layer of the ego self to realize, oh my goodness, all is really one. And that's actually what happened to me, right? So that voice that says, I am, successful, all the wonderful things, because, I'm an affirmation girly. I love all of that, right? But when I had my vision, when I had the utmost of the peeling back of my ego self in 2012, after fasting, eating a little bit of fruit, and I think I had some raw kale, but very small amounts of food. And I did this for months. And one day I had a vision that I had a literal spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, which felt like about 5 minutes, and it changed my life. And I remember after that experience of realizing that I was sitting inside of something that felt like I was in a body, I'm thinking about the museum, the Franklin Institute, where the giant heart. There may be other museums like that where you're from, but I remember running around in the giant heart when I was a child. But it was very much like that after months of fasting. Again, this is my story. I'm not recommending that you do exactly what I did, or recommending any quote dietary protocol, though I'm very much into foods and things like that, because certain foods can increase your spiritual awareness, right? But we also must take care of the body at the same time, right? So I'm just kind of telling you my story, right? This is for educational and informational purposes only, okay? But yeah, that situation, it peeled back so much for me, and I realized I was inside of a body. And when everything came down to it, I'm kind of speeding up the story a bit, but it was like, oh my goodness, I am a living cell inside of God's body. Well, if I'm a living cell inside of God's body, OMG, what am I? Who am I? I am God. Like, it was just, I didn't read this in a book or anything like that. It changed my life. But when I got in the house, I was stunned. I was actually stunned. And I was looking around, and that's when that ego shattering And it was just trying to come back up, and my human identity, because it was like I really could see kind of like above myself in a way. It wasn't like a OBE, right? It wasn't an out of body experience in that I was spiritually out of my body. I was in my body, but my mind was so expanded that I can look down on myself and see that I was an avatar. Like, I looked at my arms, I had them held out a little bit. I'm like, and I just was looking around the house, and I was like, because I was outside with the vision. I had gone back in the house, myself and my children at the time. And I was just stunned in the living room, like, what in the world just happened? Where am I? Who am I? Like, it was just the epitome of what they call, quote, the ego death, right? The ego surrendering. But I remember looking at my, self, right? My brown arms, beautiful brown arms and everything. But it was just like, this is a character that I chose. And I remember I had the question. I asked the question in my mind before I actually started asking audible questions to the universe, to the Most High, to my angels, and I got more answers. But I wondered, I said, why did I do this to myself? And this was the capital I, right? This was above the ego. Okay. This was why did I choose to become a human being? Like, this was deep, right? So these are the things, that lie beyond, right? That lay beyond the experience of the ego. We can get ourselves to a point where we are able to see so much above and beyond the physical, so-called physical universe. That is life-changing, right? And though I'm not in that same exact, emotional state now as I was then, right? I'm not like fasting, and I could get back in that emotional state, but I'm trying to balance both the spiritual and the physical worlds, right? So I'm not that strict right now, but the effects are lasting, right? And so that's the journey that I feel that humanity is on, and that you can be on, right? And so all the parts of the identity, right? Like, I'm a woman, I'm an African American, or I'm, this race, or I'm this religion, or whatever, is not a bad thing. It's not necessarily false, right? But it's only a certain level of truth, right? It's like certain other things that may be incomplete are not false, but if it's incomplete, then it can lead to an incorrect conclusion, right? So these things may all be true on a certain level, right? But they're the deepest truth about who we are. Like, are they really the deepest truth? And that's really the question. Are these things the deepest truth about who we really are, right? Because long before you adopted the labels that you have, there was already an awareness present, okay? There was already a consciousness looking through your eyes. There was already a life force animating your body. The ego gives that awareness a name and a story. But the story is not the whole person. And sometimes life gives us experiences that allow us to see beyond the story, like what happened to me. Okay. And so I went through that, entire experience, and I wasn't really trying to change my life. I was just trying to improve some minor things that were going on with my body at the time. And, it really gave me a greater insight into the world. I became more present. I became more aware, more connected. The things that used to seem so important began to lose their grip on me, right? Like my identity, even my fear. That's one thing I noticed during that time. I became more courageous. I was able to start to speak up for myself during that time of my entire fasting. And even afterwards, I saw life totally differently. the constant mental chatter that was going on in my mind at the time, it slowed down. I was in a toxic relationship, right? That's what we call toxic relationship. Allowing myself to be controlled, right? Because it's never just the other person, right? It's what we attract because of what we're familiar with. And I saw myself get so much stronger, just from, yes, these living foods that I was putting in my body, full of light, full of water. And I just allow the universe itself to speak to me, right? To show me the truth, right? And it broke down that, quote, human, identity part of me so much to the point where I saw that everything is God, right? And, it was just wonderful. I mean, have you ever had an experience like that? Or would you ever want to have an experience like that? Of course, if you can, be safe and all that, words are very powerful. And sometimes people ask for things and they may or may not get them in the way that they thought they would. So when we ask for things for the universe, we can qualify them and say, if it's the will of our creator, our source, our higher self, providing itself through the universe, that these things happen in a way, that is merciful, right? In a way where it will bring us joy. Because the experience I had was, I drew conclusions that are very similar to the NDEs, right? Like when people actually have, the near-death experiences. But I didn't have that. Thank goodness. Thank Yah, thank the Most High. Like I didn't have, a jarring experience where, you know how the NDEs go. If not, you can watch them and they vary, but a lot of times, the spirit goes, out of the body. And sometimes, people have varying experiences, but they come back with similar conclusions. Like, I'm God, I'm an orb of light, or, all these things. And I had that conclusion in my own way, but in a more gentle way, right? And so the quote ego death doesn't have to be, something that was caused by anything negative, right? It could be curated to a degree, even though when I started doing that process and fasting and becoming a raw vegan, I just want to be a raw vegan. But during the time, I told you I was in a controlling relationship, and the person I was with did not want me to eat that way. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't have a job, employment, and I wasn't, making money in the house, though I was kind of trying to, but that's a long story. But anyway, so I was kind of dependent on, that other income. And he didn't want me to eat that way, and so didn't support financially the way I was eating. So I was raw vegan, which is basically eating fruit and maybe some living, maybe some salads. And again, I had raw kale. That was mostly my green of choice, if you will. And I was eating a very small amount of it. So when you're eating raw as a raw vegan, you might be eating some nuts as well. That's a fast in and of itself. Okay. This is based on my experience. That's my opinion. Based on my experience, some people might say they're feasting, but according to my experience, you are still, a person is still fasting, put it like that, right? While they're eating in this way. And so imagine eating just fruit and maybe, some living greens, but only eating a small amount of that. And when I could get some nuts, I would eat those as well. And so anyhow, that was the journey because of health reasons. And I had a little bit of edema, a little like swelling in the ankle after having children. And I was just trying to go on a journey because of that. And it brought me to God, right? It brought me to metaphysics and everything. But I'm not saying that everyone has to be raw vegan, right? I'm not saying that everyone should be fasting. I'm simply sharing what happened in my journey. But what surprised me wasn't that I felt closer to God. I mean, I guess many people expect that. I was expecting more prosperity in my life because I was watching like the raw vegans uh, on the internet at the time. And this was a very popular time, for them, 2011, 2012. And, but so I was definitely expecting like, you know, just more, I don't know, more of a favorable, kind of a magical time, but I didn't think about it bringing me closer to God, if you will. I was already spiritual and religious, but not quite as metaphysical, right? But what surprised me was realizing that there was no place where God was not. Okay. What surprised me was that what was revealed to me is that everything is God. And the reason why I could stand on this is because I didn't read it in a book. I didn't hear it from somebody else. This was something that the universe actually showed me. And it didn't even show me in an outward way. I'm trying to explain it. It was just what I knew. I knew where I was. I knew when I looked up at the sky, this was not separate from any other part of the universe. And it was a part of something's body. And then I kept going within. I would think about my body within, and I would look outside of it. It's a long story, which I love to tell. But I would think about the veins, the internal veins, and then I would look at the cars traveling and just different things. And I was just like, oh wow, it's like the same thing, inside, outside, right? That popular phrase, as within, so without, right? These are the things that you realize, right? The capital U realizes in the so-called ego death, right? The ego surrendering, right? And so I would take a look at nature, and I would know that this was God's body, right? Not just something that God created as a separate entity, right? But it was God, or it was God's body. And I have a little nuance with that, because there are people in the metaphysical circles who call the universe God. I don't equate them both. What I say is it's God's body. In that, think about your body, right? You have several bodies, but you have a physical body. But when I say you have a physical body, you are distinct from your body. The universe is God's body, but the universe is not God in totality, in that there is the consciousness of source, just like there's the consciousness of you that exists outside of and greater than your body. Isn't that correct? So that's what came to me and what I came to know during my experience, right? And on my journey, if you will, is that, wow, I'm inside of this body that is the source, but somehow the source is still outside of, if you will, and greater than its own creation or its own projection. I really use that word more now, projection than creation, because creation tells the human being, oh, yeah, I create this, and this thing that I created is separate from me. We think of that word in the human sense, but the creator doesn't, quote, create in that way. The creator creates things as an extension of itself. Everything is connected. So anyway, that is a part of this as well. And as you can see, I can go on and on about all this. But the same presence I saw everywhere else was present within me too, as me. Not because I was separate from source, not because I had become special, even though some people, I will have to say, are chosen to get these messages so that we can bring them to the masses, right? In our corner of the world, and many of us that have these types of experiences are messengers, prophets, etc. I will say that. But I will say that the divinity is all of ours, right? A prophet, a messenger is no better than the people they're giving the message to. They just are the being and the vessel that the divine has used to give the message, if that makes any sense, right? So I just knew that everything existed within the same divine life, every single thing. Okay. They call that panentheism, right? It's different from pantheism. I looked that up years later when I was going to do some branding for my t-shirt brand, Body in God. And I started looking up, I was looking up some words for the brand, I believe. This was a couple years ago. And that's when pantheism came to me. I didn't know anything about that, but now I call myself a panentheist, because that's what I am. I'm a Hebrew panentheist. And but there's a difference between pantheism and panentheism, right? One means that all is God, and one means panentheism means that all is God, and as I explained to you earlier, that God is also greater than its a projection, right? And that would be, again, that consciousness that is having the dream, that consciousness that is making the projections. Just like you lay down, you are, quote, greater than the images in your own dream, aren't you? You are the being that's dreaming, but you just happen to be projecting yourself in the dream and all these other characters, but you're the one who's dreaming. One day you're going to wake up and realize it was your dream. And this is the same way for our source, right? Our source is the one who is dreaming us. That's all the characters inside of its dream, right? That's the cells animating its own body, right? It gets deep, right? But this is what we remember when we have the, quote, ego death, when we have the ego surrendering of our human, labels and things like that. Then we can remember who we really are. And this is where the idea of the ego surrendering started to make sense. Because when people talk about the surrendering of the ego, they often say things like, quote, they died. But looking back, I was still very much alive. My personality didn't disappear. My memories didn't disappear. My ability to function in the world did not disappear. But what disappeared was a belief, a very powerful belief, the belief that I was separate, okay? That God was somewhere far away and that I was somewhere else. I mean, I've always read the Bible and felt like God was close to me. But this was different. This was different. This was like, no, you are an integral part of the workings of God's own body. That is different. And I had a belief, before that there was like this gap between the creator and the creation, like most people do. Again, they see the creation as being this separate thing that God makes, that the creator makes, that source makes. And it is not so. Because really, it's not even that way with us. But that's another level. That's like metaphysics 102. Okay? Because even the things that human beings create, right, that we create as human beings are not separate from us. Space is an illusion. You may have heard that before, right? Physicality is an illusion. There is space between nothing. It all facilitates the illusion and the game, and it's okay. It's not a bad thing. But it can become, quote, detrimental if it's used to limit, right? If we are thinking about the things that we like to achieve in life, right? the money, and things like that. And if we think it's so far away, and if we think but it's really not, because as soon as we say it and claim it, it is here. As soon as we say it and claim it, it is ours. As soon as you think of the person, they are there. They were really there all along. If we really knew how close we all are to one another, because why? We are all connected from the top down, right? From the source downward. We can look across and we can say, no, there's space. There's, 10 feet, 20 feet over here. That's an illusion, right? It's like the puppeteer and the puppets, right? There's one hand. Now, we don't mean this in a nefarious, negative way. This is what source is doing. This is our, illusion. And this is what the quote ego surrendering shows us, that everything is connected from the top down, right? The puppets, you see the hand right at the top. You might not see the hand at the top, but the strings come down and all the puppets look separate. But there's one hand, one source connecting them all, right? And so that belief of separation, it dissolved in an instant. What felt like 5 minutes, like it was gone. So a lot of people, they may have this ego, quote death, surrendering. And tell me if you've ever had one, but like, was it jarring? Was it all at once? Was it progressive? Did it peel away like the onion? That it is, if you will. I mean, it peeled away. The universe has to show us things in, I would say, degradation, right? But has to show us things in a certain way, gradually, because the human mind could be shocked with all the things that, true reality really is. But when we ask, right? So like I was doing while fasting, when we ask, we will get the answer, but even in a merciful way, right? But with all that, a lot of the fear also began to dissolve, right? And so when you feel separate from life, so many things can feel threatening. You have to constantly defend yourself. Like one has to constantly do that. Protect oneself, prove oneself, right? Compare oneself, compete with everyone, quote, around you. But when that sense of separation begins to soften, something really beautiful and powerful happens. You begin to see that life is not happening outside of you. You are participating in it. You're part of it. You belong here because you're here. And guess what? You're always going to be here. No matter what form you're in, you will always be here. It is what it is. And when I say here, I mean existing. Earth is one place, right? But in existence. Okay? Because you are the source. So what does the ego surrendering actually reveal? First, it reveals that you are more than your labels, right? Most people spend their lives protecting these labels, right? Defending them. We are to be in the world, but not of it. You can know the label. Like I know I'm a quote, I'm a melanated woman, right? I'm an African American woman, if you will. And I'm other things. I'm a mother, etc., a teacher, things like that. But I also know that those are the identities and identifications that were put on me, or I put on myself, if you will, for this experience in life, for this round of the game. And that's okay. So I'm not even saying to get rid of all the labels. What I'm saying is don't let them take you over. Okay? Don't define yourself 100, 1,000, 1,000,000% from the labels. Because one day you're not even going to have those labels on you. Then what? Then what? The spiritual shock of the universe. Oh my gosh. A lot of people have the NDEs. They're like, oh my goodness. The body fell away. And then I remembered I was an orb of light, right? Like if we can somehow be in the world and not of it while we're living in it. Oh my goodness, what an adventure life will be, right? And that's the journey that I'm on, right? Some of us, we argue over the labels, you know, but the labels are temporary, right? We existed before those labels. And so something deeper will remain after those labels disappear, right? And the more you can do that in your life, just saying, it could be better. There is an awareness beneath every title and every role. And that awareness is closer to your true self than any label could ever be. Now, second, the ego surrendering reveals connection. The ego tends to focus on differences. The deeper self recognizes relationship. You begin seeing that everything is connected in ways that are difficult to explain with words. You start realizing that life is not just a collection of separate objects. It's a living system, a living expression of divine intelligence, a living, literal expression of God. Third, the ego surrendering reveals that God may be much closer than you think. Many people spend their lives seeking God somewhere outside of themselves. They look up, they look far away, they look into the future. Now, we know God is all those places. However, many spiritual awakenings reveal something very surprising. The presence you are seeking has always been present. How about that? The light you are searching for has always been shining. The divine life you are trying to reach is the very life through which you already exist. That realization changes everything. It changed everything for me, and it can change everything for you. Now, I want to make something very clear. I do not believe that the ego is the enemy. In fact, I think that many spiritual seekers waste years fighting their own minds because they believe that the ego must be destroyed. No, it's here for a reason, right? The Creator gave us the ego for a reason. It helps us play the game of separateness. But it should be to a degree. It is a tool, right? It helps us function in the world, right? You need a name. You need an identity. You need a way to interact with society. The problem isn't having an ego. It's letting it rule, right? It's forgetting that the ego is only one layer of who you are, right? It's like clothing, like literally. Your clothes serve a purpose, but you wouldn't mistake your shirt for your actual body, right? And it's so interesting because that's how I felt after I had my vision. I was really looking around. I looked at my body and I was like, oh my God. Like I knew it was something that the capital I chose for this lifetime, right? But you wouldn't mistake your, shirt for your body, right? So you don't mistake your ego for your actual self, right? So in the same way, your labels serve a purpose, but they are not the fullness of who you are, right? Who are you? Your true self is deeper. It's wider, it's older, it's more expansive, it's lighter, it's more connected, and far more divine than many people realize. For me, the ego surrendering was not losing myself. It was remembering myself way more than I even bargained for. It wasn't the destruction of identity. It was the discovery of a deeper identity that changed my life. The identity beneath every story, beneath every label. The identity that remains when separation begins to break away. And perhaps that's what the ego surrendering reveals about all of us. That beneath the noise, the conditioning, the fears, the roles that we play, there's a deeper self that has always been connected to God. A deeper self that has never been separate. A deeper self that has been waiting patiently to be remembered. So let me leave you with a question. If all your labels disappeared tomorrow, in the best way, all is well, who would you be? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're on a journey of spiritual awakening, consciousness, and deeper alignment, with the divine, then subscribe to Solar Alignment. Until next time, remember, you may be more than who you think you are. And the journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. Keep shining, star, because we are stars because we shine. And we are constellations because we gather. This is Batia Yisrael for Solar Alignment. Peace and love.